Hi, I'm Rose McDonough, and one day, not so long ago, I got half a bushel of peaches. And you can't eat a half a bushel of peaches at once unless you might get a little sick of them. So what I did was I made my own pie filling, and I froze it. And I froze it into a container inside my pie plate. And then I was going to go ahead and make pie crust for you and show you how to use it. But then I started thinking about it. You know what? Not everybody makes pie crust, so I have instead store-bought pie crust, because that's not really what I want to show you. I want to show you some other things putting together. Obviously, I can make pie crust. I don't make the best pie crust, I'll admit it, but I'm using store-bought. So this is a 9-inch deep dish pan. Why do I like this one? Because it's glass. And you know what's really cool about glass? I can be baking this and I can lift it out of the oven and go, woo! It's too doughy on the bottom. I definitely need to bake it for a little bit longer. You cannot do that with metal. You cannot do that with ceramic. So that's why I prefer this. This isn't, I don't know, it's tried and true for me. I don't know where you find it. I read it probably 6 or 8 years ago, and I've been doing this. Tapioca. You might like tapioca pudding, maybe you don't. You can use tapioca flour if you're going gluten-free. But I put my pie dough into my pie plate, and I'm going to shake just a little bit of this on the bottom. Not because I'm trying to make some good old pudding for us to eat later on, but tapioca is a thickener, like flour, like cornstarch is a thickener, but it's a little bit sweeter. So if you put this on the bottom, and I have too much juice in my pie filling, then it will help to seal that up a little bit. It will make it a little bit thicker, and that's all I do that for. It's not much, really. I just sprinkled it. It's kind of like coarse salt, and I shook it out over there. All right, right when I was getting started, I pulled my pie filling out of the freezer, and I'm sure this is going to make a mess. I'm going to use my hands here. I'm going to reach in, and I'm going to pull my pie filling out. You know, the pie filling that I put in here, and voila! Isn't that amazing? Come on, you know it is. It's just kind of cool, and I can't waste anything, and I should grab my rubber scraper, but I'm just going to use my hands here real quick and just pull a little bit of that juice out of there. There's not even that much. That was just a little bit of thawing out that I had. You can decide at this point that you are going to put another pie crust on top of it. And if you do, that's perfectly fine. Just remember to vent it, because otherwise it's going to start bubbling and baking out. You can also do lattice on there. And if I'm using those words, you might already be a pie baker and don't need anything from me. I'm putting this aside for right now because I'm going to make a topping instead. This is something really easy. I'm not a pie crust fan. Maybe it's because my pie crust are just fair, but I love toppings on there. So that's what I'm going to use today. I have my glass bowl, and you're going to notice that it's bigger than I need it to be. It's because I need some room in there. I have a cup of flour. If you do not want to use the next ingredient, which is a half of a cup of oats, then you can use 1.5 cups of flour. And I'm using 2/3 of a cup of brown sugar. If you had watched my video about doing the peaches, you'll know that I use granulated sugar, not brown sugar, although you can use half and half of each if you would prefer. But for my crumb topping, I really like the brown sugar instead. And I'm going to take this funny little thing called a pastry blender. So I would always tell the kids in the middle school about a pastry blender. You use it to cut in, So I remember that Ariana Kelly was in the high school, not in my classroom, and Mrs. Beecham said, "Does anybody know what this tool is?" And Mrs. Beecham reported back to me that Ari said, "I don't know what it's called, but Mrs. McDonough said you use it to cut in," because that's what I used to say to try to remember. Think of it as knives. If you don't have a pastry blender, then use 2 knives. Actually take 2 knives and cut cross back and forth, and it will work. But I have a pastry blender, so that's what I'm going to use. I also have 8 tablespoons of butter, not margarine, butter. I took this butter, I cut it up several hours ago, and I put it in my refrigerator to be really, really cold. There are times when you're working that you need to have cold butter, but I need it to be small. So using my little trademark, how I do here with my fingers, I'm just going to use my pastry blender to stir up. I'm using this to break up any of the lumps in the brown sugar, and I'm getting it well mixed together. Once I get this ingredient mixed together, then I'm going to go ahead and go with my butter. And I'm going to add my butter in and show you how to cut it in. There are times when you're working, you can stop and grab your tools. When you're doing this, this is the best time to have all of your tools organized together. So I'm going to take my rubber scraper really quick and make sure that there's no flour that fell to the bottom, that it all looks pretty much dispersed in here, which it does. And now I'm going to add my butter in. My little tiny pieces of butter. You're seeing I'm having to like scrape it off. I'm scraping it off simply because it's cold. It's frozen onto here practically. And now I'm going to use my pastry blender to cut in. Cut in, cut in. All right, so I'm just going to keep doing this until it's well mixed. So I've been working on this for about 3 minutes now, and we decided you didn't need to see all that. And since I'm almost finished with it, I'm going to lift it up. I'm going to use my rubber scraper. Oh my gosh, sorry, my pastry blender. I'm going to go across the bottom and I'm bringing it up, and I see that there's a little bit there that's still the dry ingredients. I'm just going to lift that around a little bit more and then finish cutting my butter into those small ingredients. And again, do the rubber scraper one last time, make sure everything's dispersed together. It looks pretty good. I don't know how well you can see it, but I'm happy with how it looks. I'm taking my pie. Remember, my pie is in here because I put it down in, when I had it in my Ziploc bag, my freezer bag, that I put it in there. There's a little bit of a space around here. I'm glad to have that space because I know as the peaches are thawing and cooking, they're going to slide down. I'm not worrying so much about them baking out over top. I'm going to put my crumb topping on here. If you were using another pie crust, right now you'd be laying your pie crust or putting your lattice work on top. I have to be really careful with this because I don't want too much of it spilling out. I'm going to work from the center and just drop it to the outsides, from the center to the outsides. If you were doing your lattice work, is what I started to say, or putting your second pie crust, if you read directions, in fact, that's what my directions say, if you're doing this and your edges get too brown, go ahead and put some aluminum foil around them to prevent browning. You ever done that? You know what happens to your fingers? Yeah, you burn them. It's silly. I have no idea why any book that you ever come up with, that's what they tell you to do. And I laughed because I typed it up just like that, and I thought, I'm not going to tell people to do that. That's absolutely crazy. Oh, if you're looking and you notice the white in here and you're thinking, what the heck is in here? Remember, that's the oats that have been crumbled up inside of there. Anyway, getting back to the aluminum foil. You want to put the aluminum foil on before you bake it, so that you're not burning your little fingers trying to do that. You get very frustrated. If you choose to put it on before you bake it, about 15 minutes before you think the pie is done, pull it off. I got it out, I got it all ready to show you what it's like, but I'm not going to really need anything. I have very little pie crust over here. My topping takes care of most of it, so I shouldn't have to worry about it. Well, I'm going to put it on anyway because that way I can show you how to put it on. And in case this shrinks up a little bit, I know that I'll be okay. All right, I'm just turning. I'm using my rubber scraper. I'm using my helping hand. That's what I always think of it as. My helping hand, in case anything starts falling out, I can drop it back in. I want to make sure there's a little bit more peach that's not covered over here. Let's get this all covered too, because if I don't, that's going to be the first place that's going to drip right on out. There we go. Perfect. All right. Does it look good to you? I hope it looks good to you. It looks good to me. Oh, I got a fruit fly. This is from having so much fruit in the kitchen lately. You know, with fruit flies, they do say you can do something like some vinegar and put some vinegar down into a cup that the fruit flies can't get back out of. And I just try to make sure I don't keep too much fruit out. All right, so that's it. That's that part. Now, I have my oven preheated to 400 degrees. I'm going to bake this. So the recipe tells you somewhere between 45 and 60 minutes. And you're thinking, that's a 15-minute window of opportunity. Why so much? I'm using frozen, so I'm really going to be closer to the 60 minutes. If you had fresh filling, you just made your pizza filling and put it in, then you'd be looking at, instead, you'd be looking at more like 45 minutes. So you're going to take this, and you just lay it around on the edges. Very simple. I took a strip of aluminum foil, and I'm using heavy duty aluminum foil. That's what I pulled out, and I did. And I'm going to have to fold that around there and then bring it back down. It's not perfect, but 1,000 times easier to do this while the pan is all cold as compared to when I'm trying to use the baking sheet in the baking pan and it's burning hot. Add this back on. You can, if you're a real pie baker, again, you're not watching me if you're a real pie baker. I'm for the average person who's trying to learn to do things. But they do have, if you find that you start loving to do this, they have these little things that you just actually put right around onto your pie. Ah! Fruit fly is making me mad. All right, and with my handle it's a little hard there going around, but let's see if I can hook this back together. Hopefully once I hook this, perfect. Mash it down onto the sides. We're ready to go. That's it. The next time, that's called a failure. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened. Let me try folding this back onto itself here. We'll take care of it here. See if that works better. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. All right. Well, at least you know that I'm real. I'm not like making stuff up here as Miss Perfectionist, heaven forbid. Well, I am perfectionist when it comes to using my rubber scraper, but not everything. All right. I think it'll stay this time. I hope. I'm not going to pick it up, so you're not going to know anyway. All right, this is going to go in for probably 60 minutes, but I am going to check it at 45 minutes. I'm going to pull it out, lift it up, and look to see how brown does the bottom look. And then I'll put it back in for a few more minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Probably, I'm lying, I probably won't check it at 45. I'll probably start at 50, and then I'll check it for a few minutes after that. All right, so just because I'm going to put this in the oven, we'll show everything later. I'm going to go ahead and pull some names now for some shout outs. Hey, I'm needing some more people here. I'm getting low on my list. I'm not sure where I'm going to find everybody. Oh, Shawna Murray. Shawna Murray was a student of mine. That's really cool. What's most important is Shawna Murray used to live in this house. We bought this house from them when they had to move to the state of Indiana. Thank you, Shawna. I'm very glad to have your house. It's a great kitchen for us to be doing this in. I often wonder when you're watching, do you look around and think, oh, that's where we did this, that, or whatever in that house? Ah, the next one, Jessica Candido. Jessica, they own a pizza place. And Jessica's husband does most of the cooking, but Jessica has started doing some cooking as well. And she has, over the years, become a friend of mine, I'm glad to say. Jess, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. All right, so pie's going into the oven for 50 minutes and checking it, and then checking it the next 5 minutes and 10 minutes, and we'll see you in a little while. So I checked it when it was 50 minutes, and then I checked it 55, and it's now been a full 60 minutes. And I want to pull it out. Brooke had asked why it seemed like the topping was so much, but of course the topping wasn't so much because once it cooked down, there's a whole lot less topping. All that butter in there, it has cooked down in. About 8 minutes left is when I took off my aluminum foil off of there, 10 minutes left, and then you want to go underneath, and you see how it's just starting to brown underneath and dry out? That's how we know we're not going to have a soggy crust. You might notice I use silicone. These are the best in my opinion, and they can handle up to 550 degrees. Now technically you're not supposed to eat a fruit pie for about 4 hours because you have to let it kind of settle. I'll stop talking and see if you can hear. Can you hear the crinkling going on? That's because it's actually bubbling inside of there. So once that bubbling stops and it cools, it gels, and we're ready to go and eat it. So in about 4 hours, or maybe tomorrow morning, we'll get to enjoy some wonderful pie. I hope you enjoy some wonderful pie because you try this recipe yourself.